Hello and welcome to this week's Mindset Podcast. I'm actually here with Chris Heller. He is the owner of the Heller Real Estate Group in San Diego, Chief Real Estate Officer for Ojo Labs, co-author of Dominant Thoughts, Things Grow Where Our Mind Goes, and by many, a premier thought leader. Chris, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Always looking forward to these type of conversations.
Me too. I'm actually excited. I've been following you for a little bit, obviously pre Ojo Labs, and you know, the one thing that I guess I have to say is I appreciate how long you've been in the real estate space, and not only that, it's the level of growth that you've attained starting as a real estate agent. By the way, I know in 1989 you got the Keller Williams Real Estate Agent Award of the Year, which is awesome. By the way, I was born in 1989, not to age either one of us. But you've seen a lot of growth starting as a real estate agent and working your way up, and you have your hands in a lot of pockets in the real estate industry. What's been kind of the leading success story that you can maybe give some advice for those agents who are looking to do the same?
Yes, I have been at a long time, over 33 years. I've had a real estate team, and I haven't. I stepped out of the day-to-day operations of my team in 2010, so 12 years ago. But that team in San Diego to this day is still a very productive and profitable team.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's certain things that are characteristics that we see in people that achieve success at a high level. Whether it's their work ethic, the preparation, the practice, and the hours that they put in to hone their skills. But really, the thing that I've seen more than anything for myself and for other top performers in our industry is mindset, which is the topic of your podcast. So having a strong mindset has been one of the things that's probably helped me as much as anything that I've done.
That's awesome. So in your book, Dominant Thoughts, and by the way, the book is it's a pretty short read. It's about what I think it was like 98 pages. What I really appreciated is though it's written I want to say it's written for real estate agents specifically, but there's a lot of your experience about real estate, that in real estate that you use to leverage writing. It is a book about mindset, and it's for lessons for all professionals. Tell us a little bit about kind of how you decided to write this book. And I know that you co-authored it with Craig Reed, and I got to see that interview, which was awesome. So it was cool to see the shift of your conversation and how kind of the light bulb turned on when you guys decided, this would be something you wanted to pursue as far as the book goes.
Yeah, look, I've had thoughts for many years about writing a book. I've been fortunate to have great mentors in my life, and I've worked alongside two self-made billionaires as the CEO of their companies, running those companies for them. And the exposure that I've had, the mentors that I've had, the coaches that I've had are something that I know not everyone has access to. And through those relationships, I've learned some phenomenal life lessons. And so that's really the foundation of the book. The idea of the book, like I said, I've had the idea for a long time. I was on a podcast, I don't know, year and a half ago, and with Greg Reed, who's named as the co-author on the book. And the host said, "Hey, Chris, when are you going to write a book?" And I said, "Yeah, I've thought about it, but I'd have to ask Greg how to do it because of that." And he has written over 40 books. So Greg called me a couple of days later and said, "Hey, you mentioned that, you wanted to write a book, but you really didn't know how to go about doing it." He goes, "Well, I can show you." He goes, "If you have the content, I'll show you how to do it. I have all the contacts. I have all the, the agents, the publishers, the artists, the editors, everything." And he said, "And we'll just be co-authors on it." I said, "I have the content. I've had the content for many years." And so that's how it started. And I wrote it with two groups of people in mind. One is my four kids. I have four kids between the ages of 23 and 33. And as a dad, there's things you want your kids to learn and you want to teach them. But telling them usually isn't the most effective way to do it.
It's hard for us to listen when it comes from our parents initially.
So I thought, having it in a book would be a great way to do that. And then anyone who's young in their career or just looking for some good reminders on how to jumpstart their career. And as you mentioned, it's not real estate related. It's a story. It's a parable about a mentor and a mentee, but it really applies to any type of business or sales profession. But anyways, that's how it came about and how it evolved.
That's awesome. This mentor-mentee relationship, I know there are a lot of people who don't understand the value that a mentor can bring, or if they do, they're not really confident in being able to get out there and put themselves out there to find a mentor. Um, I guess this is going to be a two-part question because it's more for myself. As a mentor, what are you looking for when you want to take a mentee on? Because you, obviously, at this point in your stage of your career, I would see you as a mentor based on all the the information that's out there and all the content that you're writing as well. I know that you write a lot of content for a lot of real estate related publishers. Uh, and as a mentee, when I go to approach a mentor, what would be the best way for me to approach a mentor to get them to at the very least realize I'm a little bit different than anybody else they've spoken to, and I'm worth your time as a mentor?
Yeah, so let me answer the first part of the question, which was, as a mentor, how would I evaluate or decide if I was going to mentor someone? Um, the first thing I always look at is, do I have the time? Because I'm not going to commit to do something halfway or partially, right? If I don't have the time, I'll just be honest, say, I'm sorry, I can't help you. Beyond that, what I look for in the individual is someone that has these traits, that they have uh, a high level of desire, that they
Mm.
are coachable, and that they truly are interested in doing something, whatever it is, in whatever field they're in, that I think I can help. So they have to have the desire, they have to be coachable, and I have to feel like I actually could contribute to them in a positive way or a way that would make a difference. So those are the things I look at. Um, the I'm sorry, Dan, my microphone.
No worries. I'll give you the second part of the yeah. The second half was, as a mentee, how do I approach a mentor to be able to show them that I'm worth the time and kind of start to work under their wing?
Yeah. I think the first step is to find out if someone is even open to being a mentor for you.
Of
Like,
course.
gosh, do you mentor people and are you open to having a conversation about that? And because that's the first thing, right? We don't want to assume that, just because someone's successful, they want to mentor, or they can, or they do mentor people, right? There's
Hmm.
been stages in my life where I absolutely would not have been able to do that. And then the other is to be really clear with what your goals are and what you're looking for, so that the person that you're talking to can effectively evaluate whether they are a fit and whether they think you're a fit for one another. So if I'm going to a mentor, I would say, hey, I want to. This is an area that I want to grow in or I want to get better in, and I know you've done extremely well in this area, and I would love the opportunity to have some time with you to ask questions and to understand what I need to do to get better. The other thing that's really important as a mentee is that you go into the conversations with the attitude of that you are responsible, or if I'm the mentee,
Mm.
I am responsible. I am responsible for how this relationship goes. I am responsible for what I get out of this relationship, and I'm responsible for any results I produce as a result of this relationship. That's a key focus for anyone in a that's looking to work with a mentor.
That's some awesome advice. I mean, so that still revolves. It goes back to that whole mindset as a mentee. The mindset I need to have the approachable mindset is, like you said, be coachable, be willing to kind of, listen to what you're saying. Um, how much of that is how much of success would you consider to be the mindset versus any other element that would be considered a successful partnership?
Okay, I think in most industries and in most jobs, it's probably 90%. And people are going to go, wow, that's high. How could it be 90%? It really is. I mean, the 10% are the things that we do, right? Um, if you're, if you're in real estate, right? It's knowing how to fill out a contract and knowing the laws and the procedures and how to utilize the technology you need to use in those things. But when it comes to being massively successful, what separates, because anyone can learn those things on what to do,
Right.
right? It's anyone has
That's the
access.
easy part.
Yeah, but what separates, the extraordinary achievers from the ordinary achievers is their mindset. Like, how do they respond to things? How resilient are they? What is their attitude, their approach, their expectations, moment by moment, day by day, week by week, month by month? Uh, those are the things that really separate, the great from the others. Setbacks. We all have setbacks in life and in business, and some of us have them on an hourly basis, some of them have them on a daily basis, some on a monthly, yearly, whatever it is, whatever cadence that those challenges come at you at. It's how do you respond to those, and what do you do as a result of that, and that's where mindset plays a big role.
So, do you feel that the mindset is something you can, as an entrepreneur, consistently grow? Or is it one of those things where it's just innate and some people have it and some people don't?
Um, No, I absolutely believe that you can grow and develop it. Like, I wasn't born with a strong mindset, but we all have experiences and things that happen in our lives that shape us and cause us to go in one direction or another. But I became very purposeful about developing a strong mindset because when I got into
Mm,
real estate, I saw early on that I observed a lot of things. For example, I would observe an agent have something bad happen, right? They lost a client, they lost a transaction, um, someone was angry at them, and I would see them take themselves out of the game for days, be ruined by the event or the news that they got. And my initial response was, wow, I can't afford to have that happen. I can't afford to be taken out of the game for days or weeks, right? I need to figure out how to deal with this effectively and keep going. And so developing that mindset of being able to deal with things and in certain areas compartmentalize things to where you can continue to go. Um, uh, Professional athletes or Olympic athletes, we see this happen all the time. We see in baseball, we see a professional athlete strike out, and at their next at bat, they're not dwelling on what
right.
happened in their last at bat. They're not thinking, "Oh my God, I don't want to strike out again. Oh, it's so embarrassing. What happens if I do this?" They are laser focused on achieving their goal. Now they will learn from the previous at bat, but they won't have that impact the next at
Right.
bat. And that's one of the things that I saw and observed early on. So I became, again, really focused on, okay, how do I develop a strong mindset? Because I don't want to have that. I don't want to be the batter who's dwelling on his last at bat. Um, and so, there were just certain things that I started doing all the time to develop that stronger mindset.
Awesome. I really like that example. So, in one of your podcasts with Tom Ferry recently, you talk about words of affirmation. And this is something that I've heard or has been introduced to me, and people have recommended it. And I do it at the gym when I'm at the gym and I'm about to, lift some weights. But is it something that is important in part of growing your mindset, or is this more of a self kind of characteristic where it was just something you did and it worked for you?
No, I think it's really important. In Daniel, the example that you gave, the gym is a perfect one because I spent a lot of time in gyms, and you can actually make your body weaker or stronger by the thoughts you
Yes.
have. And it's not it's as real as and you can do it by what you're repeating in your mind. So the same thing happens in every other aspect of our life. So um, I've used affirmations, boy, from the very earliest days of my career till now, and still do. So, and I've used it everything in, I've given talks to, as many as 19,000 people at a time. And when, as the CEO of Keller Williams and leading conferences and, helping myself be calm, be focused, be
Hmm.
poised, in those situations, utilize affirmations a lot. I just, um, a few months ago, climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, which was really hard physically
Wow.
and mentally. And and I used affirmations a lot.
Wow.
On the summit day, you know, I I had two things I kept saying over and over again. As the higher I go, the better I feel. The tougher it gets, the stronger I get. And those are things that you can use to condition your mind. And the more you condition your mind, the more your body will follow that.
I was speaking to my mom the other day about just exactly the gym, and I told her, for me, the gym has become a mental game rather than a physical game, because if I can lift 50 pounds on a standard rec today, why can't I do it tomorrow? And it was interesting for me to kind of come to the conclusion, well, it's just because I have let myself down in my own mind. If I go to the gym saying I can't, or if you go into anything you want to achieve saying you can't, you're not going to do it. And it's not because you can, it's because you've already put yourself in a position where, you're comfortable and okay with failing. Therefore, you're more likely to fail. So go ahead. Sorry. Uh,
You're so right. My kids from an early age, um, would probably laugh if they were watching this or hearing this right now, because anytime they said can't, my response was, we don't use that word. That's
mm,
not a word we use. That doesn't exist. And
interesting.
I conditioned that into them.
Yeah, I mean, so positive attitude is something obviously that's extremely important. How do you achieve that at such a high level? I mean, one topic of conversation I do want to get into is obviously you've raised hundreds of millions of dollars for multiple companies throughout your career. I'm sure as you progress up the food chain, it gets more difficult and it gets more difficult. So what do you practice in order to achieve such a high level and stay at that level?
Yeah. So affirmations is one of them. The other things that I do, is that I limit the negative. So what I mean by
Mm.
that is we're surrounded by negative stuff, right? If you go to any news
It's all negative news, yeah.
negative news, there's negative people, there's negative situations, there's negative environments. And so I really early on started to limit my exposure to anything negative. So who I spend time with, what I watch, what I listen to, what I read. And at the same time, I did just the opposite. I over-indexed on putting in the positive. So what
Mm,
I listen to, what I watch, what I read, who I spend time
I
with.
like that.
I'm very purposeful about shielding or limiting the negative and putting in as much positive as possible. I've shared this before. I always operated under this premise that there was a finite amount of space here, and I was going to fill that space with as much positive and as little negative as possible, so that I wasn't battling that, because like, life is hard enough and what we're trying to achieve are hard enough. It's
Right.
much easier to do the things that we need to do when we have a good attitude or positive attitude. It's much harder to do them when we have a lot of negative in our minds and in our thoughts.
Um, you've used the word purposeful a few times now, and I've picked up on it because for me, I think that's something that I've been focusing and working on. I want to be far more deliberate with my actions and not fall into the mundane day to day, I guess, social expectations of behavior or habits that I have. How do you, when you when you use the word purposeful, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, it means actually focusing on it and being and taking action to accomplish the thing that I'm working on or I'm doing, versus whether it happens by happen chance or happens unconsciously, right? So it's a very
Hmm.
conscious decision to do something or to take an action.
So that leads into a perfect kind of point of topic of conversation. Back in 2021, you were talking about the importance of marketing strategies and video content, and for me, it was interesting because I'm all about creating processes, and I think that this is a topic in real estate that is talked about but isn't trained on enough. And I know that this is something that you focused on, especially with your team. How important in business in general is it to create processes?
Daniel, I'm sorry, it broke up a little bit. How
Sure.
important are
It,
processes?
yeah, processes in business in general.
Yeah, super important. So processes are structures, and structures we put into place to either accomplish something or make the accomplishment of that thing easier. So, um, I put structures into place for all sorts of things. So one of the things
Hmm.
that I and we haven't touched on yet, but we probably will or we can is discipline, right? Creating discipline in different areas of your life. And one of the things I did years and years ago was to create the discipline around getting up early. And so the structure I put into place to ensure that it happened is that I put my alarm clock far away in another room. So I would put it in the bathroom. So I had to get out of bed. So that was a simple structure that facilitated me,
Ah.
and created a process for waking up in the morning and getting out of bed in the morning. In business, there's a finite amount of time that we all have. And there's really only two things that you can do to increase your productivity in the finite amount of time you have. One is around your effectiveness, and the other is around your efficiency. Efficiency is all about systems and processes, right? So you can do more with better systems and better processes. Your effectiveness is skills, right? You can do more or achieve more results with higher skills and in developing your skills at a higher level. So I always looked at knowing that I couldn't create any more time, right? We all have the same amount of time.
Right.
But how could I do more? How could I be more effective? And so it always boiled down to what I called my two E's, my efficiency and my effectiveness. And then I would separate those out. Say, okay, how can I become more efficient? How can I become more effective? And then I put in processes on the efficiencies, mostly processes, for how I could accomplish the things I want to accomplish.
So if I'm saying it correctly, there's a parallel between discipline and effectiveness, as well as structure and efficiency. Would that be kind of a way? So, Chris, would you say discipline comes before structure, or would you say it's a combination of you need to work both at the same time?
Um, you need to work both at the same time. So
Okay.
you can have all the structures and processes in the world, but if you don't have the discipline to use them or stick to it, they're not going to serve you. They're not going to be of value. So at the same time, you have to start to develop the discipline. And discipline is a habit, it's a muscle. It can be developed just like any other habit or muscle, but it takes time and it takes mindfulness to do it. So developing the discipline to do the things you need to do, especially on the days that you don't want to do them, is something that really separates again the extraordinary from the ordinary. And the more discipline you have in certain areas, the better and the more you'll do in that area. For example, the more disciplined that we are with our time, the more time we actually have,
Hmm.
right? The better
Interesting. I
the
like that.
better we use our time, the more time we have for doing the things we want to do. The more disciplined we are with our money, the more money we generally have. The more disciplined we are with our health and our diet, the better health we usually have. So a lot of people have or view discipline with a sort of a negative connotation or a negative trigger in their mind, maybe from when they were kids, because when you're a kid, discipline usually isn't a good thing.
No, when your parents are disciplining you, I guess that's an interesting concept. You associate being disciplined with, a negative action by your parents.
Yeah. I think some people view discipline also as being restrictive or um, you know
Limited.
a lack of flexibility or limiting. And I always view just the opposite. Like I said,
Yeah.
the more disciplined I am with my time, the more time I have, which means the more freedom I have to do the things I want to do.
You're using the discipline to accomplish what you want, rather than using the discipline to kind of, in the negative context, which is to put yourself down. Um, I'm going to quote you on that. The better we use our time, the more time we have. And I mean, I guess time can actually be swapped out with any idea that you want. So thank you for that. I like that. That kind of is a leeway for us to talk about disruptor. I know that you talked about being a disruptor quite a bit in a lot of what you publish. What is a disruptor, and what does it mean to you?
Okay, there's a lot of different definitions that we could assign to that word.
Okay.
Okay.
For me, it just means challenging the status quo, right? So not being limited by what we've learned in the past, not being limited by how we've done things in the past, not being limited by how things are or the way they're being done. So it's constantly disrupting that. There was a book I read back in the 90s, and maybe the mid to early 90s, called "If It Ain't Broke, Break It," and that had an impact on me. And it
I
really,
was not
Not
expecting
expecting
that
that
title.
title.
yeah. And so it's as I said, it's challenging the status quo, saying not being satisfied with how things are, or how they have been, or how we think they need to be because that's how we've always done it. But always looking at, what if, what and why, always asking the question, why? Or why do we do it that way? Or why have we done it that way? Or why do we need to still do it that way? So for me, being disruptive is always challenging that and looking for opportunities to change and do things differently.
Um, that totally caught me off guard, because usually it's, if it ain't break, don't fix it or don't change it, right? Do you have an example that might stick out to you of something that you use this tagline for, if it ain't broke, break it, and it resulted in in a far better process or far better end result than you ever expected?
Yeah. So I think part of it is just my attitude towards change. So I've always been wanting to change things because I'm never satisfied. So I'm
Hmm.
always looking at how can I make things better. And sometimes you have to break what you've been doing to do something different or better. Uh, Examples would be, if you own a business and someone's leaving your business and you're going to replace that person. And one of the things I've always done is that I've told that person, when you come into this role, I don't want you to over-index on what you've been taught or what we teach you or how we've been doing it. I want you to ask questions. I want you to challenge everything you see and hear and say, well, why do you do it that way? Or why was that put into place? Because there may have been decisions we made several years ago that were valid decisions at that time. They're no longer valid or needed now.
Mm.
So it's an opportunity to reinvent and what the process or what the job is or what the role is or how we do things. And that's always a welcome thing, right? Because that's where innovation comes from. Other examples would be just in our routines, making sure, yes, there's certain things that we want to have the discipline and develop the discipline around to build that routine, whether it's your morning routine that helps you start every day in a powerful way or whatever it is. But also look at things that you've done the same for a while and say, hey, what if I changed this? What if I did it differently? The gym is a great example. If you keep doing the same exercises every time over and over, at some point you're limiting or you're going to hit the ceiling of the benefits of that. And
Right.
changing up and doing other exercises that work those same muscle groups will then get oversized results. So there's examples all over the world, but I think the biggest issue is that most people resist change, right? Because
Hmm.
they view it as bad or uncomfortable or scary or uncertain or unknown. I look at just the opposite. I look at it as exciting, as opportunistic, as a way to do more, improve, be surprised in a wonderful way.
So, I mean, maybe it's a silly parallel, but that seems to me to be something that's part of the definition of a disruptor. So, would you put the two of that together? I mean, being a disruptor and challenging and breaking things and not being comfortable with being in the same position. Because one topic, actually, my COO recently wrote about this, and it kind of put me in an interesting thought, is if you're not moving forward and you're staying still, you're actually moving backwards.
Yeah. No, I've always, I totally agree, and I've always viewed that way. I always, the visual I use in my mind is facing the wrong way on an escalator, right? If you're standing still, you're going the other direction. So you have to be moving forward and moving forward at a good pace to be able to really get to where you want to go.
We haven't even talked about the real estate space at all yet, and I mean, I'm sure there's a whole lot. Still have a couple more topics to go over, but we'll get into those. Obviously, you and having spent your time as a real estate agent and working your way up. What are some things that you've learned in as a real estate agent that has helped you as a businessman, entrepreneur? I mean, obviously you're the chief real estate for Ojo. What are some new innovative marketing solutions that you've come across that you think real estate agents can implement as a process into their business?
Everything we've talked about is applicable to real estate agents or people in any service or sales industry. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about why agents don't succeed and why they don't, because the majority of them don't. We're all familiar with the 80-20 rule in real estate. It's more like the 90-10 rule or the 95-5 rule, where you truly have 5 or 10% of the agents and the teams doing 90-95% of the business. And what's the difference between the ones that are doing that and the ones that aren't? And again, not to beat the subject into the ground, but mindset is certainly a big part of it.
Of course.
And then, the other parts that are all related to mindset, is someone's level of grit that they have, their level of desire, their how resilient they are. For years I had a little label on my computer monitor that said, "I'm never down. I'm either up or getting up." So I would never allow myself to be down. I was already up, or if I got knocked down, I'm getting back up. And those are the things that I've learned just by watching and being around hundreds of thousands of real estate agents for the last 3 or 4 decades. The other things are most people talk themselves out of being successful, and they do that by limiting beliefs and limiting self-talk. They don't make the follow-up call because they're afraid that they're going to be bothering someone or interrupting them, or that they're going to be viewed as a pest or too salesy, or whatever it is that whatever that dialogue that they're having or
in their own head,
that they're having. So that is it's been frustrating to see that and watch that so much. But at the same time, for those that I've seen get beyond that, they really get to reap.
So one of the practices that we teach is obviously the power hour of calling. And in the first 90 days of any new real estate agent's onboarding process with us, is we give them a script of cadence of cold calling for 90 days. And the expectation is that they are putting 200 outbound calls a day. They're spending 3 hours of talk time just to get them comfortable with the uncomfortable thought process of, if I call someone and I'm interrupting their day, because it's not true. In reality, most people need someone to talk to anyway. So you're probably helping them and you're building that relationship and that partnership. But it just takes that one call, the 1 out of 100 calls where you talk to someone who will ultimately, maybe 3 months from now, 6 months from now, turn around and call you back and say, "Hey, we had a conversation. I think I'm now ready to sit down and talk about possibly selling or purchasing my next property."
Yeah, no, totally agree. I built my career on making calls, and I did it for 26 years straight, before I moved out of the role and became just an owner and operator of the team instead of the person leading the team.
Wow.
And I never, in 26 years, I never missed a day of doing lead generation, lead follow-up. Um, and
The discipline.
that's how I built my business. But there's, again, that's where mindset comes into play, right? Because in discipline and all the other things we've talked about,
Hmm.
there were many days, and probably more days than not, where I didn't want to do it, or I didn't
Right.
feel like doing it. But I developed, a strong mindset around that. I developed and used some tactics and some structures or mind games to do that, like not listening to my wants and my don't wants, right? So anytime that voice came into my head and said, I don't want to do this, I don't want to make another call, I don't want to be on the phones, or I want to be at the beach, or I want to be golfing, or I want to those things, I would quickly say, I don't listen to my wants and don't wants. I do what I need to do to achieve the goals I have. Now, it's much easier to do that when you have goals that are really important to you. So
Mm.
having those goals that are super important, that you're not willing to give in to how you feel or what you want to do or what you don't want to do, becomes one of the critical pieces to being able to keep doing those things.
So now that you brought up goals, I know there's a lot of conversation about should I have my short-term goals? Should I create my long-term goals? Should my short-term goals be the daily, the weekly, the monthly? And should my long-term be, 1 year, 5 year, 10 year? What was your practice around the goals that you set, and how did you define the period in time that you felt was one that was actually conducive for you to achieve those goals?
So I always focused on 1 and 5 year goals. And then my 1 year goal, I broke down into 12 months and then into 4 week and then into weekly goals and then into daily goals. So what I knew was if I achieved my daily goal every day, that I would hit my weekly goal. And if I hit my weekly goal, I'd hit my monthly goal. If I hit my monthly goal, I'd hit my annual goal. So
Right.
if I wanted to make X amount of dollars, all I had to do was figure out how many houses I had to sell to make that amount of money, and then break that down into the activities I need to do on a monthly, weekly, and daily basis. And that's sounds super simple, but I like simple approaches, and that was an approach that worked really well.
I mean, KISS and it's keep it simple and stupid, I guess, is one of the ways that we approach goals. And again, I think a lot of this information is out there. It's just agents, or in general, business people don't tend to utilize this early in their career. And we do the same thing. Again, if you want to make X amount of dollars, we reverse engineer it. And if there's one thing I took away from studying computer science for the 2 semesters I did in college was reverse engineering. Where do I want to go, and how do I, backtrack an equation in order to break it into the most simplest form and I guess KPI, key performance indicator that I can in order to hit that goal. So I really love that. Uh, as far as technology, is there any new tech that's been maybe that you've come across that you think entrepreneurs, businessmen, or real estate agents? Because I know that Ojo provides quite a lot of resources for the agents, right? That you guys work with. What are some key tech that maybe businessmen, again, real estate agents should be implementing if they haven't already?
We talked about our efficiency and our effectiveness. And when it comes to efficiency, that's where we want to be leveraging technology as much as we can, right? Because there's a lot of great technology that's been developed to help us be more efficient and more effective. We're using it right now, right? We're having this conversation using technology, and
Right.
prior to prior to this technology being developed, we'd have to figure out a time to
You'd have to be sitting here.
yeah. So, how can we leverage technology and looking at the areas of our lives and looking at our days and our weeks and our processes and procedures and saying, okay, what are the things that are taking a lot of time or is taking more time than I wish they would or than they should? What areas can I leverage technology to become more efficient and more effective with? And there's no shortage of them. In fact, there's almost too much to choose from and too many choices, then it's up to us to, okay, just narrow our focus and find and address the things we need to do. So when it comes to lead follow-up, okay, what CRM am I going to work best with that allows me to efficiently, effectively, initiate and conduct all my lead follow-up, and it's not necessarily that one CRM is better than another, or and maybe they are, but it's really the one that you're most comfortable
Works for
with,
you. Right.
the one you're going to use. I use agents used to ask me all the time, what's the best CRM? And my answer was always the one you use. Whichever one you use will be the best one for you. And so, just looking at technology as this tool that we have to help us do more or do things better or do things quicker or make things easier. When I hear anyone talk about things that even resembles, resisting using technology or resisting, the improvements and the evolution that's continually happening at a faster and faster pace with technology, it's always a little sad, because I think, okay, this is someone who's going to get left behind or won't be able to keep up, or a year or two from now won't be able to do what they're doing now because everyone else will have, evolved to a much higher level of effectiveness.
It goes back to if you're not moving forward again, if you're facing the wrong way on the escalator, you're going the wrong way. Love it. Chris, I mean, we're coming closer to the end of our conversation. And is there any final words for our listeners, or, anything as far as yourself you'd want to, let people know?
It's, and this is not just for real estate, but in everything. What we do is hard. Like, work is hard. That's why they call it work. But we don't need to make it harder, by how we think about it and how we relate to it. And you can actually make it easier by how we think about it and how we relate to it. So, that is where developing that strong mindset. I mentioned it earlier. One of the things that one of my early mentors, pounded into me over and over again was to always be focusing on my attitude, my approach, and my expectations. So is my attitude as good as it can be? And am I doing things to have the best possible attitude? Is my approach as good as it can be? Have I developed the skills at a high enough level so that I can achieve the things I want to do? And then are my expectations where they need to be? Am I expecting that I'm going to get good results? Am I expecting that I'm going to do what I need to do? Am I expecting that I'm going to get the response I need to get and want to get? Or am I expecting that it's going to go bad? Expecting that they're not going to be there and no one's going to answer the phone? So always looking at our attitude, our approach, our expectations.
Love it. Love it. There's been a lot of real amazing gems in this, and thank you for spending the time with us. I really appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll be able to connect again soon. I know we're actually working on our side. We're looking on doing an online convention for lead nurturing for real estate agents, and our goal is to have Homelight and possibly even yourselves and one or two others come out, and it'd be awesome if we could set something up. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Chris, thanks again for your time. Really appreciate you, and hopefully we'll be able to continue this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate it.
Pleasure. See you guys on the next one.